much to everyone who's joined us this morning. This is our very first Impact Culture session. We're delighted to be hosting these. And I'm going to explain a little bit about why we're doing it. We have, we've got a lot of interest. So we've got a lot of people who are going to tune in later. So whilst some of us who are here, and thanks for your time being here, will get to kind of engage a little bit, please feel free to do so on chat. And also we'll be opening up the floor a little bit later for anybody who wants to give examples or bugbears or examples of where they have seen real impact in this area, and game changer kind of ideas are all welcome, but all things are welcome. But just to kind of frame the session a little bit. So this is a series of things about topics that we really believe in Mantra strategy. And we want to connect on them for a number of reasons. Today's session, why alignment matters. People who know Mantra, people who know me, and people who know David O'Connor, who I know is joining us on the call here, know that we talk about this kind of sweet spot of where purpose, strategy, culture, all come together. And it's kind of the key that inspired the Impact Culture sessions to be called what they are, that brand culture when you're inside and you're outside really matching. It's a sweet spot, and we know it's competitive advantage. So we really believe in that. And we plan to use these sessions for a few different reasons. We are trying to do some research and substantiate what we believe, which is more about the tangible actions that get you to that sweet spot. And this is going to feed into that. So inputs, dialogue with people as part of this series will help with that. We also want to update you on kind of what we've been doing and some of the kind of qualitative interviews that I've been doing with David O'Connor, and also the work we've been doing with some of our clients. But you also might be here to connect and engage because the topic resonated with you because you're facing an issue. It may be that you've just gone through major change. It could be that you, like us, just absolutely love talking shop when it comes to purpose and impact, and all of those voices are very welcome as well. Or it could be just that, you know, you actually work in this area, or you're dealing with a particular misalignment in your own team or work. So no matter what your reason for being here, thank you, and for being of interest, being interested in the topic. So we're going to cover a little bit of content, but not too much. And that's because it's the first one. I think in future we'll have very little content and lots of roundtable, but for the first one, we wanted to kind of frame what we think about it all. And we also really want to encourage people to share. So Kira is here. Kira, you might just, Kira's name is Mantra. We've totally taken people into the tribe and renamed them. And Kira's here. Just to say hello.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
And Kira is going to be engaging with people throughout on the chat and stuff. Feel free to pop any kind of notes into the chat as we go, but equally we're going to have a couple of points where we pull you in and open up the floor. So just to get started, as I said, we really believe in this topic. From the minute I started Mantra, this was the one thing that has actually stayed the same on my website. We fundamentally believe that actually it's a critical driver of advantage. We believe that purpose is, you know, it's becoming more and more important is what I would say. Nothing on my website has changed around that. And we've been doing some work on really trying to help people understand and connect with the why they exist, communicate that, and make sure that's the way they do things. So we know it's not always the case, and I think everyone here can agree. We've all experienced when lived values aren't matching up to the brand promise. We know it can have a significant impact on people. We know through our work with clients, some of whom who join these sessions, you know, it can impact mental health, it can impact productivity, it can impact collective performance. It can really impact the bottom line. And for us as well, for the clients who are doing massive kind of day-to-day work in our society and communities, it can really impact on important causes. So we know it's vital, and we want to dig into it a little bit more and help more organizations keep people longer and do all the the things that actually really embed positive engagement. So that's kind of just the framer for you till I kick us off. So how are we going to do this today? Very quickly, we're going to talk about what we're talking about, the issue and the impact of it in some stats, and we're going to invite you to join in a little bit on that. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but equally you can. It's totally up to people themselves. Use the chat if you prefer. We're also going to then just talk about the opportunity of it, and when we get it right, what does that look like? And we really want to dig into that more and more in this series. We want to just give a quick update on some of the research we've been doing and the initial highlights. What I would say is none of it is absolute rocket science, but actually it's kind of astounding how many organizations have lost sight of some of the basic fundamentals. And we've all been there, we've all done it, and it can be tricky to keep it live. So we want to talk about the organizations who are doing this really well, and we want to talk about what are those key things they just do not lose sight of to hold on to that. Our case study, we picked one for today. We could have picked several. We are working up a number of key tips into an ebook. Today, we want to get your input as to others we should be looking at as well. And we'll also just talk about what the next session is going to be. How does that sound for those who are here? Is that all okay? Okay. Great. Well, look, just to frame, I suppose we've been in existence now. Mantra is 4 years. We're impact creation consulting for 4 years. And we've worked with public organizations. We've worked with charities, large and small, corporates, and a lot of social enterprises, and even some startups, quite a few actually. And in this time, a lot of the same things come up over and over. If you don't recognize him, I'm sure I have all sorts of versions of him. And that's really the finding, is that a lot of people feel stretched. They are feeling like their day-to-day isn't kind of exactly what the organization puts itself out there to be. They are maybe feeling like the company's doing too much and they're being pulled in different directions. A lot of our clients feel like the clarity of direction isn't there. So they may have gone in a slightly different direction. They may have a bit of vision fog, we call it. They may have followed some money and now they're doing more of one thing than they planned. Whatever the reason, I suppose, sometimes staff aren't clear why they're doing what they're doing. And moreover, that means they can get a bit stuck. They can be afraid to make decisions. They're not clear on what their autonomy piece is. So decision making is blurred. And we're seeing this more and more. And I'm sure many of you can relate. So this is what we're summing up as the issue and why alignment matters. So before I talk about some of the numbers from our perspective, I want to just throw up a slide around, what is the so what of all this? So here are some numbers on the bottom, and I'll start by saying we can use our chat for this. I want you to guess which number matches the percentage, no Googling, guess which number matches the percentage of people who are quiet quitting. So anybody who's on the call live, you might just pop into the chat what you think is the right percentage of people who are quiet quitting. Thank you. Great. Okay. I might actually hold the answer so you don't know which one is the next one rather than jumping in. To everyone to think now about what percentage do you think of people are engaged at work globally? So not America, not Europe, across the world, what's the average percentage of people who are engaged? So actively engaged. From all the surveys Gallup do, this is all taken from their work. So a lot of variety here. Great, thank you. And so the question that was asked on the next one was, yesterday, were you impacted by stress at work? So this is about people who say, yeah, not just I was a bit stressful, it's people who are impacted by stress. So what percentage do you think of people in 2024, it was earlier in 2024, said they were stressed at work? Again, it was a big sampling. What do we think? It's really interesting. Great. And this is one that I'm fascinated by. So purpose is more and more important because it really matters to millennials. And I want to see what you think. What percentage of millennials will make up the global workforce by the end of 2025, just next year? What percentage do we think it would be by the end of next year globally? Chance. Great. Okay. Thank you all for participating. So we have a lot of variety. I might have to do a little quiz later to see, check back who got which ones right, but you'll be able to self-score on some of this. The last question looks a bit confusing, so I'll just clarify. People were asked which factors from a whole range of factors would they change if they could improve how they felt about engagement at work. And so the percentage isn't the people, it's the percentage of the answers that related to culture, pay and conditions. So I'll just start by saying that one is the 85%. So 85% of the factors mentioned related to culture, pay and conditions. So I'm going to just stop and give you some of the answers on this. So percentage of people quiet quitting, I'll go back up to our answers. It's 60%. So it's quite high. Did we have a David O'Connor? Well done, well done. The percentage of people engaged at work, this is quite astounding. It is only 23%. It's very, very low. The percentage of people who are actually actively disengaged is so substantial, and we all need to kind of be aware of what can we do around that. The percentage of people stressed at work yesterday, a given point in time earlier this year, was 44%. And amazingly, the percentage of millennials in the global workforce by 2025 will be 75%. So we know that millennials care more about flexibility than pay, but they absolutely care about culture, and they fundamentally care about purpose. And not just purpose, authentic purpose, which means lived values and culture as well. So I'll just pause for a second. What do we think? Any major surprises there? Obviously, we've had a bit of engagement. Anybody want to jump in and kind of comment on that? Put people on the spot. You don't have to at all. That's why we're using chat, but feel free.
Just to say that they're very powerful figures. I mean, hugely.
Yeah. The millennial one I thought was amazing because we're only in the late 20s or 30% now, and that's only a year away. But that's how significant the kind of aging population comes to bear, is that there's going to be a major shift. Deirdre, I think you were going to come in there.
Hi, sorry for being late.
No problem.
They're really powerful numbers. And I had actually guessed 60 as opposed to 75 for the one about the percentage of millennials. But I was spot on about the people engaged, or rather lack of engagement at work, because we did a bit of study of that a few years ago where I was. So yeah, and that's why I'm here, just to sort of touch base at where all of this is at now, because it's really, really powerful. I pay a lot of attention to this, so thank you.
It is. No problem at all. So we're delighted. So thank you for everyone engaging in that. And I suppose what I'm hearing from people is it is frightening, the number of people disengaged. And, when you're working from a consultancy point of view, we started very much so in strategy, but we very quickly realized actually, people need help with the getting people rallied behind doing any of this, because actually, even in an organization where you're driven by real impact, or let's say eco-chem right over to, as I am, or charities, like actually it doesn't really matter whether you're in a charity or a company, unless you're feeling connected, unless you're feeling supported, and unless you actually enjoy it. Really people are are getting back to the point of, you know, the fear and dread about coming back from holidays. So it is really insightful, and we are going to get on to some of the things that can help change it. 2 other quick slides before I do that, before we get into the, okay, what can we do with that? So I'll just hope the tech works with me here. So a nice colourful slide just to talk about the benefits. So top line, before I get into some stats again, top line, we all know the benefits are huge, right? Team buy-in and positivity, that feeling of, you know, actually this is great and wanting to be part of something, that rally kind of call is a big driver. But happy workforce does mean things like longer tenures, more productivity, staying more engaged. At Mantra, we talk about dream. We have a dream framework, which we've worked on with Learnovate, and I'll talk a bit more about Learnovate later. But for us, that translates to, if you're happier, if you're more engaged, you can dream bigger. And if you can dream bigger, you're more innovative, you're more collaborative, you have more conviction and more confidence in what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that is really, really powerful. And that sweet spot we keep talking about, that's what it's really all about for us. So we talk about 4 C's: greater clarity, greater conviction, greater confidence, and greater collaboration. But there are other business benefits that are absolutely huge: customer loyalty, profitability, bottom line stuff, turnover, etc. And I'm going to just cover a few of those stats now. Innovation, though, is one that's really, really important. Like, we can all stagnate, even just in, if we feel stretched. Like, my picture of the guy with all the stickies is relevant, because if we feel stretched, it mightn't be that we don't have enough resources. Okay, it might be, but it mightn't be that. It might be that we're being pulled in a million directions and we actually don't know which bits are contributing to the right goal. And I think, Martina, you just commented there around waste, you know, all the effort. And that's one part for me: return on effort, return on, you know, all the impact of people. They won't actually get onto ideation, fun stuff, and real engagement of innovation and collaboration if they're so busy just doing what feels like the grind. And so how can we change that is something we want to look at in the next section. Shane Cusack, hello. Did you just join us, or did you want to say something?
No, sorry, I just joined you. Apologies.
Okay, perfect.
I was
No
late
problem. You
to
just popped up on my screen there, so I said I'd say hello.
Hi.
Very good. Okay, great. So that's just the kind of colourful slide, and here are some of the substance behind it. So Gallup looked at over 112,000 work units, which was 2.7 million employees. And they looked at the difference between the top and bottom quartile. So top 25%, bottom 25% in terms of business outcomes. And again, these stats are kind of astounding. So I have others, but like 81% difference between the top and bottom in absenteeism. Like, that is mammoth, right? But it's so much deeper than that. Then obviously, people who are feeling stretched are going to feel more stretched if their colleagues aren't there. There's going to be more risk. There is health and safety or quality issues. So safety incidents, the difference between the top and bottom: 64% in safety instances, 58% in patient safety incidents. And that's like, this is life or death stuff. So it's massive impact. But that goes further into things like in retail, shrinkage, 28% difference in theft, effectively, for the really engaged versus disengaged. In low turnover organizations, 43% difference in turnover. In sectors that are low turnover. In sectors that are higher turnover, it's still an 18% gap. So these are statistics that actually are kind of astounding, but it's like, okay, well, it's a no-brainer. So what do we do about it? So again, just to give me a moment for my voice. Any thoughts on those stats? I mean, are we familiar with these? Did we think they were that big of a difference between top and bottom? What do people think?
I think that the absenteeism stat is absolutely shocking. That, you know, between top and bottom, there's a huge, and then productivity and everything else that's impacted as a result of that. I never ever thought that a number could be as high as 81% when looking at absenteeism.
It's very stark between the top and bottom. And actually, I like read Gallup constantly, right? I read all those different culture sites, Culture Gallup, you know, Culture IQ and all those. This even astounded me, the difference between the top and bottom.
Yeah.
And it's really that sweet spot around what are the ones up here doing that we want to emulate. That was really interesting to me. Jane, I see you've turned off your mute, so would you like to join in?
Yeah. Sorry, my Wi-Fi's atrocious today, but I'll chance it. Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of reflecting on, I mean, I hate using the word post-COVID so many years later, right? But like how much of this continues to be a fallout of a period of time where everything was completely thrown up in the air, and like everything from purpose and values being re-examined by people, like the flexibility that's just came to be expected, the whole, dare I say, remote working kind of debate. I think it kind of feels like we're at a point, we've evolved to a point in time where, you know, we talk so much about customer experience having to be tailored and personalized, and it's kind of like an employee experience needs to be tailored to the same extent almost.
Yeah.
But we're used to a system where it's one size fits all, and nobody's figured it out really how to deliver that yet.
I think it's spot on, actually, Jane. We actually, I think that goes really hand in hand with the inclusive leadership piece, because if we're going to really be much more inclusive, we're going to have to bear in mind that one system won't fit all, and that we're going to have to really meet people where they're at. And I think that's going to force it. Obviously, it becomes much more challenging when it's much bigger organizations and who by policy standardize and whatever. But even those, there are some really good examples of where that is being delivered. And but you're right. I mean, some of these figures are definitely still impacted by the change in us and our behaviors as a result of COVID. But the reality is that across the globe, when you look into the Gallup studies and some of the others, they do it by region. And it's up and down in some places like Asia. They tend to be a bit happier than us here, us folk here. But at the same time, they're all still ambling and struggling with the same thing. So even if it is that, we've got to find ways to reforge those connections in different ways. And so that's what we want to get into a bit. Sorry, I can't see everyone. So is that Bruce?
That's me, Bruce. Hi. I was just thinking that it's interesting about the COVID thing, because I think the millennial trend was happening before that, but it kind of accelerated it because it moved a lot of businesses into addressing offsite working, etc., which has really challenged a lot of team and alignment. And I would expect that my thought would be that would be one of the things that really drives these huge differences, because obviously it's much harder to engage across a team if your team is not physically with you, which I think is a really interesting thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think the ways of working is a big part of it. Okay, great, thanks. And hello to those who have just joined us. You're very, very welcome. We're using a bit of chat and a bit of the chat function and a bit of just jumping in where it makes sense. So please feel free to contribute and join in whatever way makes sense. So the next piece I wanted to just kind of, again, these are prompts to get us talking then at the end, but the next piece I wanted to talk about was some of the work we're doing in this space. So I'll just throw it all up here first. So just to say, we developed a purpose impact culture matrix. So I started this call by saying, mantra, really believe in this, but like, you know, just because I fundamentally believe in it doesn't mean it is so. And I have to be able to substantiate it. Plus, we really want to give our consulting clients, strategy clients, tangible ways to move forward in this and get engagement much stronger and get that sweet spot of, you know, your culture and your brand promise are the same and people feel the values. So we created a very simple matrix that questions our clients before and after we work with them around how aligned they are. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. We also put it out to anybody who wants to test where their alignment scores are, where there are some gaps. And we worked with Learnovate in Trinity College, who helped us hone it so that the scoring is pretty tough scoring. Like, you can have a fairly high overall score, but if you're falling down, and it's kind of not really strong alignment in certain areas. Sorry, I have an echo. Is somebody saying something there? Sorry. Are we okay? Sorry. Yeah, we work with Learnovate and Trinity, and they've honed it so that actually this score really identifies if you're top of the game, and most others are kind of somewhere met in between, and there's a misalignment. And so what we've been doing is using those outcomes and the scores to then do qualitative interviews with different leaders. We've started the process, so David O'Connor's on the call here. David has been doing some interviews with me where we're actually interviewing some big international charity leaders to really identify what are they doing with their culture, with their brand, with their connection to the cause, to really make sure it is as strong as it can be and make people happier and more engaged at work. We're also starting the process of doing very similar with big brands and corporate leaders. And we also have created these sessions as part of our journey to also get input from lots of other people on what's working well and what, I suppose what really great looks like. So basically we want to keep it very simple, and we will be creating an ebook from it. But for now, I suppose what we've done today is just highlight a couple of the key findings so far. The first thing before I do that, I'll just give you a quick look at how simple the matrix is. So the matrix is 5 areas we look at. Mission and purpose. Do people know and believe in your purpose and mission? Doesn't matter whether you're corporate, public, or charity. That doesn't matter. A lot of people think mission, purpose is, the sole reserved for charities. It's not. This is about what you're all about. Do people know it, get it, connect with it? Your leaders, are they working cohesively without factions? Do they work as one for the mission, or are they working kind of for self? We've all been there. Your people, how aligned are they? Your brand and communications, so that's the outside and the inside message. So the outside message and the inside action. So is that kind of being felt? And then we go a step further with that around the culture and values. So do you really live to the values you have and commit to the purpose then in all you do? So if you're talking to somebody on, in a plant or in retail or on the shop floor in a charity or in a HQ, whether they're in reception or really senior, do they feel that you are committed to that purpose and live your values? And so that's the simplicity of it, and it creates a score that's very much so like and modeled on NPS, in that we really only focus on the really, really good, because we want to get to the nub of what are they doing that we all should be doing to improve this. So that's the gist of it, and it's available. We can share it thereafter, but just so you know, very happy to let people to fill that in and get a sense for your own scores as well. So what are the key hallmarks coming out of that? And don't worry, I'm nearly finished talking, but a couple of key things. So if values are and authentic values are the cornerstone of successful alignment, in our opinion, they're the guiding tenets, they're the principles by which your organization work. And culture is, everyone says how things are done, but it's social order or not social order. It's how people feel as well. Lived values are key to culture. So values, it's no surprise, came up as absolutely core to all of this. The organizations that we've interviewed so far, they keep values at the heart in really meaningful and tangible ways, and we'll talk a bit about that. They democratize the values process, so they get people involved in understanding what the values are and deciding what they are. And we have some really good examples of that. And I know, David, we've often talked about IKEA and others who picked ones that are really meaningful for them. Patagonia, Squarespace are often mentioned. We've picked a different one to give you a totally different perspective today in our case study next. But just to say, keeping the values alive, getting people on the same page, there's a few different people we interviewed that have these projects to keep that same hymn sheet, one of our interviewees was talking about a choir project and it's all about alignment. These are really important parts of it. So the shared purpose and connection to impact, those that we found are the best. They've made it really clear how people connect to impact. And again, not just in impact organizations per se, all organizations. So that could be making sure they know how intrinsic D&I is, or it could be making sure that actually they're getting out on the front line, listening to customers. They're getting out, listening to, really, really, really staying close to what the cause, if it's your ESG or if it's your day job, doesn't matter. So they're really kind of driven by why you're here. So one such example is, spending quarterly time on that kind of front line or in different, so it can be shadowing different jobs out, but really getting that direct link to the cause. The other things that we've seen people do here are things like naming projects. And, I know, Kira, you mentioned, I know everybody knows about, the kind of different brands where it's become a verb, but this doesn't have to be just about the whole organization. This can be within teams and across teams, a cross-functional team project name. So whatever that name is, or it could be about getting your mantra and connecting to it. So that's number 2. And we come on to a bit more detail on this, and we're going to open it up to you as well. The third kind of hallmark was really around inclusive, authentic leadership. So really, I suppose, emotional intelligence came out. Well-being at work was a huge part of it. So leaders who are making sure they're minding and meeting people where they're at, absolutely huge. And being really people-centered then, that's obviously falls from that. So I think what we found is, it's about how you treat people, staff and customers alike, stakeholders alike, everyone. That's the biggest hallmark in a way of alignment, doing what you say you'll do. And so there's quite a few others, and we do have some really practical examples of this coming up next. But I want to pause here and just say, so what do we think? First of all, I think there's one or two comments around the purpose impact culture matrix, but let's just say, obviously, mantra come at this very much so about purpose. So it's not going to have everything in here, but those 4, what else do people expect are key hallmarks at this stage? Just let's open the discussion a bit. Deirdre, yes, we will be. We can absolutely share that. It's something that's useful just to give you a very blunt, here's where the big kind of opportunities for improvement are. Obviously, with clients, when we're consulting, we use it as a lever to decide what actions and focuses they can make, but it's there for you to use anyway, Anybody want to jump in? I suppose connection to impact, shared purpose. Anybody from a corporate or public organization that wants to talk about how that, manifests for you, or what that might look like?
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Have you done any surveys of US companies and how they've sort of transitioned to the expectations and the cultural requirements in Ireland and probably the UK and Europe? The most basic starting point in the US is employment at will, right? And how do US companies build upon that to sort of attract the best talent? And I was just wondering, have you done any sort of research, or have you done any have you run your study across any of companies that have broken into new markets like Ireland?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We have within the responses that we have so far, there's definitely a couple of international organizations, but I'm trying to just think of that. So we've had about 25 different organizations respond specifically to the purpose impact matrix at the moment, and we're going out further. We actually we've a new client that we're going to be working with who's in the US and UK, but I'm not sure they haven't done it yet. So, but I think ultimately what you can do, and certainly what we do have access to, is there is plenty of research around the kind of changing ways of work in those organizations. They're not very different to some of this. And from our work with some of the tech firms that we've worked with, or the fintech type organizations, and even in our consulting business, whilst it's not in a survey, we would have plenty of insights as to some of the things they're having to do to become more relevant employer brand here.
Okay.
And I think it's relevant no matter where you are in the globe. It's how much, say for example, DEI, and I know it's had some pushback in certain US circles of late, but actually DEI is more and more important to a lot of those because of the millennial. They're much higher makeup of millennials already in those workforces. So DEI, ESG stuff around kind of active CSR and community building has been, they're streets ahead of us here in Ireland, even when you look at some of the activities they're doing in terms of engaging staff. So I don't know if that answers your question. And sorry, I wasn't sure who was asking that question.
Sorry, it's Darren Bergen.
Hiya, Darren. Yeah, so because we can follow up with some of the interesting resources that are available to us in case you haven't seen them, but we haven't done a huge amount of our own just yet.
Okay.
So the organizations that we work with in the US have been very much so specifically looking at DEI as their core purpose focus. So we've more on that specifically.
Right, thank you.
Okay. No problem at all. No problem. Any other questions before we go into a couple of tips and then open the floor?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one thing, because oftentimes I agree with all of this, and a lot of times when you deliver this to a client, they look at, well, okay, how do I do the values? How do I do the purpose? What's that? How do I include? But actually, the big thing for me working with organizations is a shift in attitude. And before you could even engage with this, and that attitude is moving from the kind of the model of crudely command and control, which is kind of, this is what you should do, and this is how you should do it, and here are our values, and we're driven by a set of matrix and objectives, to involve and inspire, whereby people are part of it, and it's an attitudinal change that we're actually we're going to involve our people, we're going to involve our customers, we're going to think about everything as a community and think about things holistically. And that it's almost like that breakthrough has to happen before you can engage in any of these things. And oftentimes, when I work with clients, we're doing values, and I realize, hang on, shit, I've actually got to go back to the beginning and talk to them about that shift from command and control to inspire and involve.
I think you're dead right. And David, I know we've worked with organizations together around the values piece and values workshops, and really baking that into, it is about mindset. And we're going to give a couple of examples of the ways organizations are doing this. So huge organizations, of course, have established values, probably top down to some extent developed, or bottom up, like IKEA, whatever, but they're not for changing. And so what do we do if we've to overlay on some of those and make sure? And so we've brand culture workshops, emotional culture workshops we do with different teams and different parts of organizations, so that they can still foster their own sense of that culture piece and connect it back to the overall organizational goals. But I think you're spot on. It is about a mindset change, and brand culture, or impact culture, which is our series and sessions, is all about, it's not just an initiative over here or one thing. It's a whole program. It's a holistic approach, and it is the leaders really buying into it. But it's also about everybody being able to, set the culture in a way where you can ask questions, be able to ask for help, make mistakes, and so on, and pushing for that. And I think we're starting to see more employees leaving very quickly if that's not the right environment for them, and if they're not getting that. So yeah, are people trusted in your organization? Are they empowered? Can they make a decision easily? Are they going to be afraid to make that decision? How are your leaders showing up? Are they tuned into how they're feeling? All of these things join together. But really it is about trying to get a recognition that even as a very small organization, even as a small charity, there are ways to do this from, you know, it's not something that we can defer just to leaders or the board. It's something that we can all play a role in and actively step into driving some of that and expecting it, and that drives change.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of they're very top line alignment tips from us, but then we're going to talk about a case study we've picked. So I'm conscious of time and I've actually already run out, so I'm just going to we can share these afterwards, but some of the things for alignment we've said is that co-creation of the shared purpose. So that can be something that can be really done as a group. And our case study, which I want to talk about very, very briefly, she did the values piece. They didn't co-create it, but they absolutely did the onboarding and baked it into what they do. The vision that inspires, we do a lot of work in that space. Baking purpose into every day, really, really focusing on workshops and emotional culture and really how people are feeling and how they want to feel and how they'll be really much more productive if they feel at work. And, you know, there's loads of exercises that can be done around that. One key point, you know, is around not confusing alignment with agreement. Everybody doesn't have to be on the same page, but everybody doesn't have to agree fully with the decision, but they have to row in and get aligned and do it anyway because they're there, they want to be there. I mean, sometimes we've kind of forgotten we have a contract, and so bringing that back, but it isn't the control piece anymore. And just knowing that it needs to be nurtured and kept live and real. It's not good enough to just have these. You have to make sure you're checking in, holding yourself to account, and so on. I'm conscious of time, so one quick thing I wanted to show was this piece, which is Starlight. Starlight, I did put up a clip on our LinkedIn, so if you haven't looked at it, it's worth looking. It's only 1 minute of the full hour interview, or sorry, 3 minutes of the full hour interview. But she rolled out a very, very interesting approach. She wanted everyone to be so not indoctrinated because they all have to have their own story, but she wanted everyone to really think about what's their connection and to hold themselves accountable. But she used one value, not 5, not 3, not 4. It's no perfect number. It's quite a brave move. And they basically wrote out one value, and that's to shine. And so they built it in, so they were asking people, am I shining when I'm with my team? Are they shining? Should I check in with them? Am I shining brightly enough when I'm with the young people they're there to support? So their value is very much so something that allows them to question even, you know, am I doing this the best I can, whether it's governance, rules, decisions, whatever, is it totally aligned? So I thought that was really interesting way to do it, but it means everybody can actually have their own connection. They also have everyone trained on positive psychology. They show up for each other as much as for their patients, and they really live their values in very meaningful ways, and they get out and they do frontline stuff all the time. Now, I know they're a charity, but we've loads of other examples as well. They've managed to increase their income by 5 to 50 million a year, and for a charity that's huge. And they've also increased their impact 14-fold. So it's absolutely huge. So I'd love to just ask people, you know, who else is getting it right? Who do you look at and admire? We're going to be doing lots of interviews around this. So we're really, really keen to hear more about who you think has cracked it. And we'll be gathering all the insights and putting it in our ebook, but also what's been the biggest game changer for you. So if anybody wants to jump in on that very briefly, because I'm after running out of time sorry about that, but so anybody want to jump in? Any thoughts on what has made a difference for you in your organization, or where are the biggest issues? Any thoughts? Martina, how are you?
Hi, thanks very much. I think that's been absolutely brilliant. I was trying to think of shining examples, and there's loads of them, but I suppose from my point of view, I think one of the biggest challenges is, I suppose, the value alignment with the objective. And actually, for lots of organizations, and one of the organizations I'm working with at the moment, we've just been so busy doing loads of different things that we're not quite clear what's actually ultimately getting us closer to our shared objective. And I think this has just been really helpful to show actually it's not just that we're being disorganized, it's actually the demotivation, the lack of engagement from other people. That is the side effect of that. So we really need to make it happen.
The other thing I would say is, I know I've mentioned David a couple of times here, but David and myself we're kind of co-facilitating the next session, hopefully with Roisin, who's here somewhere, I think as well, around how you harness belief purpose to really kind of rally the troops. So I think what we do find, and Roisin will speak to this, so she does all of our strategic purpose consulting, and a lot of organizations say, you know, actually, no, we don't really need to look at our mission or our values. Well, we don't need to look at that. And we're like, no, you absolutely do, because actually they often need reinvigoration and connection back to how does this objective feed into that? Joining those dots is really crucial, because if people don't see that they're part of that, they totally lose their mojo, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. So Roisin, I don't know if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, so it's always where we start, and sometimes I get eyeballs rolled at me because don't touch the vision, don't touch the mission, don't look at the values. We've done this before, we've sat around the table, and then I just start scratching into it, and when people work through it, inevitably they start to feel the connection, and or not. And if the connection isn't there, that's when they look at a revision or a review. And it's always crucial that it's not a wordsmithing exercise, and people get very attached to particular words. But what we try to work through is the sentiment and the feeling, and that connection for people. And then the vision becomes about everybody, as opposed to something that's aloof or that's far away. And it makes strategic planning, it makes staff engagement, it makes all of that so much easier, because people are much more closely connected to what the bigger picture is. So yeah, we end up reverting the eyeballs, come back to engagement and smiles once we've worked through that.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? Deirdre.
Hiya, just one of your questions there for the discussion. Excuse my voice, and I'm coughing and spluttering all over the place.
Thankfully, we're on Zoom.
Which is why I'm working from home. But yeah, one of the big game changer moments for me was about 10 years ago, when, listen, these things always happen by accident, and yet you look back and you see it's such a growth journey. But just the realization, and it was the mindset. I think somebody said it earlier in the call. My mindset, something clicked in my mindset, and if I could translate it into plain English, one part of what clicked was something that I knew with my brain, but I didn't accept with my heart, I guess, or my feelings, until it clicked. And that was that actually being a CEO, you know, it's not staff management has to be part of your job. You know, it's like, oh, if it wasn't so much trouble with staff, I'd be able to do my job kind of mental attitude, to accepting, you know, fully hook, line and sinker, that the only job I have as CEO is to manage staff. I don't have any other job other than that. So that was one part of the clicking. And the second part was actually the realization, like about 10 years ago, that culture statements, ways of working, I know people have different words for them, values, etc., etc. But when we went into a workshop scenario with the team, and we allowed them to create the statements of what the best place to work in this organization would be, and then we held ourselves accountable every week. You know, we spoke, we touched, and then it got a bit corny, like we were the Moonies or something. So we moved into every month and then every quarter. But, you know, so for 10 years or so, I was doing that, and it was extraordinary, because it surfaced all of these culture and values words on a piece of paper, yes, but it was a piece of paper designed and owned by the staff. But more importantly, we talked about it at regular intervals, and we changed our staff survey. You know, how do we live these values, and when do we not reach them? And I guess where I'm at now is completely the opposite, because one of these
Starting over.
old-fashioned command and control organizations, and it's like, Jesus Christ of Almighty on a bicycle. It's really, really, really interesting and challenging is a positive way of putting it, to just start bringing that sort of culture in. So just some of this framework, that's why I'm here, to just to sort of remind me how I can go back to before the basics began, because I don't have much control over my vision and mission and the official values of my organization, but I do have, I guess, culture statements, which is just a phrase you can invent and work on that with staff.
Yeah, well, and that's a really valid
Sorry.
point, Deirdre, is that there's a lot of scope for every organization, no matter where you are in the organization, to still build on what exists and make it more meaningful for you and your teams. So we do a good bit of that. Excuse me. So starting with the emotional culture, where I'm at, how I need to feel, what's our team culture like now, and are we living up to the organizational cultural values as well? The other thing you mentioned there that's very relevant, Bruce and I are working with another new organization, and you know, sometimes we see our role, or we talk about culture as, well, they're doing this or they're doing that or they're, and in actual fact, all of us have a role to play in shaping and being part in active leadership, no matter what level you're at. So we're trying to encourage that everybody sees their role, especially, of course, leadership. They absolutely have to emanate the values. They don't always, which is why we do hands in hands with the emotional intelligence piece. But I think just actually building on that and making sure that everybody's having the right conversations. So I'm conscious of time, folks, and I'm really sorry we ran over. It was our first one, so we waited a few extra minutes to start. But I just want to say again, thanks for being here. For anybody who didn't make it and is going to watch back, thanks for watching. And we are running our next session on the 25th. So that is going to be really about helping actually put shape on the how you do this in terms of transformation and messaging and positioning. So it's going to be really, really interesting. We've got a whole suite of these. They're going to be really interesting. We'll be talking all things that we love, DEI, vision and culture on repeat. So, and finding and motivating the right people. So love to see us tune in at some of those, but there's also a few natural next steps for people if they want to do the matrix, and we'll be in touch if you want to book in for a complimentary sounding board on where you're at and what's going on for you. We'd love to unpack that with you. So thanks a million. Lovely to see new faces as well as those who we know. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.